Hey there, athletes. Coach John Ferry here from Team Wilpers. Excited as always to welcome you here to our Week 10 athlete briefing for the Half Marathon Challenge. Cannot believe it is Week 10 already. I feel like we just started. Where has this year gone? But here we are, Week 10 already. Per usual, we're going to start with our quick Week 9 review. So we had that final half marathon pace interval run workout, really our last full workout before race week. So we're spending steady chunks of time there at that half marathon pace. Hopefully everyone's starting to get really kind of comfortable and confident finding that pace, sustaining that pace, using that pace that you're hoping a few days from now ultimately to kind of go out and run your race at. So that's where we started the week. Kind of went into our endurance run with strides, not an unfamiliar workout at this point. I know, but just keep doing it, It's great. But we're officially pulling back really at that point, reducing a little bit of volume, reducing intensity, obviously not doing that second key workout in the week, just keeping things nice and easy. Finishing the week with a nice kind of, we'll call it a middle distance long run here. I want to keep this one extra easy as well. It's going to be the theme here of the next, of today for me and the next week for you is not an opportunity to overdo it. Hopefully it's a lot more to lose than gain at this point in terms of fitness. So this is what I like to call a confidence run, where I just want you to go out, hopefully walk away feeling really good at the end of it. That's the main objective of our long run here in Week 9, which I think most people still have. Just because we're coming into the final week doesn't mean I'm not going to talk about checking the boxes. So just a reminder, as always, keep going in, checking that box, trying to track that 100% completion percentage. It is the best way to put yourself in a position to be successful. Speaking of just the end of this challenge, as you will want to check off that final box before the Sunday, which might be your race day. So if that 100% is important to you and tracking it, make sure to get in before it flips over to Monday next week. Get that final check mark, get that 100%. As you, I'm sure, are very well aware, there's no 20-minute distance test to finish this week. So our system's kind of built in and around that 20-minute distance test, but that's not the goal of this challenge. The goal of this challenge is to have a fun and successful half marathon. So our kind of assessment of this is just going to have to be based upon how you felt, how you did, how you thought the experience was. 20-minute distance test will be for another time. If you aren't racing this weekend and your race, your A race is 4 to 5 weeks still away, you might be able to test this weekend. It's not a bad opportunity. Everybody else is kind of going out to run a lot of people are going to run their A race this weekend. A 20-minute touch base to see how speed is going. Once again, as long as you have 4 to 5 weeks, up to you. Little teeny bit of housekeeping for the New York City half. Obviously, Team Wilpers is headquartered here in New York City for the most part. We're going to have our Team Wilpers New York City Half Marathon Shakeout this upcoming Saturday at 10 a.m., meeting and finishing at Bethesda Fountain. Would love to see as many people there as possible. Whether or not you're participating in the race, doesn't matter. The more, the merrier. Speaking of the more, the merrier, I'm going to also try to add a Team Wilpers cheer station in and around like 56th and 7th Avenue. Dana Mancini has volunteered to be our captain of cheer here in 2024. So it's going to be our kind of point person on that cheer station. Then we're going to finish off that NYC half marathon weekend. We'll say some post-race libations around 1 p.m. at As Is Bar in New York City. So I'll make sure to post all that to the Facebook group, but a couple things just to kind of keep on your radar. Now to our race week workouts. So if you've been around these challenges for a while, you know that I love coming into test weeks, love coming into race weeks as well, with a kind of shorter progression run to start the week. It's just a great way to kick off a race week in general. We get to touch on some pretty relevant paces here. You get one more kind of short period at marathon pace and half marathon pace. Love a progression run that you finish stronger than you started. That's exactly the mentality we want kind of going into a key event. Just a great way to start a race week. Keys for success in this workout, in particular to this week, is kind of the keys for success always on a progression run, but in particular on a race week. Make sure to start nice and easy. Be very thoughtful not to overshoot your paces in this workout. Do not want this to become a kind of secret hidden threshold workout. Not the objective here going into the weekend. Make sure to cool down nice and well, really well. Certainly the first thing to go is some of those cool down activities, so make sure to take a nice slow ramp down, really let your body settle, and then jump right into that post-run routine, whether it's stretching, rolling, mobilization, etc. Use the little bit of extra time here you have this week to really unwind and come down from that workout. Key run number 2, another endurance run with strides. Once again, really pulling back here. Training effect is fully closed at this point. All we're really trying to do is kind of stay active, stay sharp, not lose that body feel, prevent any sort of little detraining, which really is not going to happen too much at this point anyway. But just trying to kind of stay consistent here with this workout. So no gold stars for pace on this. It's really about being controlled and being able to pull back and take this one nice and easy. And our third key run of the week is our race day, our half marathon. So been working very hard for this, been working for at least 10 weeks building up here. Super natural to feel nervous heading into a key event like this. But just remember, this is supposed to be the fun work part. All the work gets to the fun part, the celebration of the work you put into it here. Couple of little tips just for your race day. Big proponent of show up early. Alleviate the stress on yourself on race morning. It can be, especially in big city races, which there are many of this upcoming weekend. There's a lot of lines, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of things to navigate around. Eliminate the stress, that time pressure for yourself. Get there early so that you don't have that kind of nervous energy going straight into the start of your run. Make sure you have time to go through your morning routine. I'm confident that over the course of the last 10 weeks, you've been working on this on the weekend, trying to get dialed in. What are you having for breakfast? What's to drink? When is it? These are all those things that hopefully you've been working on over this last 10 weeks. Obviously, this is the time to actually put them into action, but make sure you have time for that full morning routine. Very similar to the progression run. We don't want people shooting off the line and really overrunning off the starting line. Don't want that super fast start that's non-sustainable here. It's a long race. Don't be a starting line hero. So I just got off a call just about an hour or so ago with an athlete. And we talked about using that first mile or two. It's really a bit of an extended warm-up and then settling into pace. So there were 2 reasons I wanted them to do that. One was to make sure they didn't start off the line too hot. There's really you can get excited, and I get it. I've done it more often than not. But the mentality of the starting line is very exciting. It's very easy to come off too fast. So if you put a little bit of a guidepost on yourself that you want that to be a bit of an extended warm-up, mentally, it helps me kind of check myself right at the top, make sure I don't push too hard, go too fast right off the line. For mile 1 in particular, this is an opportunity. You do not want to dodge, weave, or try to work your way around people. You don't want to use all that extra energy there in mile 1. You want to save it for later in the race. So it doesn't take long. Be patient in mile 1. Like I said, plan a little bit of a slower start. Let the crowd disperse. All of a sudden, when you can kind of get your feel and get spread out, you want to settle into that pace there and find your rhythm. But you don't want to end mile 1 realizing you'd add an extra 1/10 of a mile on. The race is long enough. Save that energy later in the race. You can make it up at that point. Some things I think are absolutely awesome to do. 1, give high fives, often and freely. I think is a great energy boost along the course. Do absolutely say thank you to volunteers when available. People are showing up and putting in their time so that you have a good time. Do try to smile sometimes. Remember, it's supposed to be fun. So while it's absolutely okay to take it seriously, put in some hard work here, want to have a good time while you're out there. And most importantly, no clicking off your watch up for finish line photos. Kind of hit your post-race pose, save the watch for 5 extra seconds coming across the finish line. Like I said, nobody likes this finish line photo, so just wait a few seconds there. Let's talk a little bit about pacing for the half marathon. And there are a lot of variables that kind of go into this. Some of them would be kind of your experience with the race distance. We've talked a lot about that. The course itself, the weather of the day, a few other things. So I want to kind of make some general guidelines here. So if this is the farthest that you have ever run, or you haven't done a race of this duration in quite some time, I'd strongly recommend an easy pace start to finish. Cross the finish line with your hands held high. I've done it both ways. That way's a lot more fun. Sets you up for success in the race. And then next time out, be a little bit thoughtful about pacing. But just kind of covering the distance successfully, having fun while doing it is a great way to come into it. If you've done this a few times, you're pretty experienced now with the half marathon, that's the opportunity to get a little bit more specific. So as discussed, like I really use mile 1 and mile 2 as a kind of a reserve start. It's kind of hard to warm up before these races. I'm using that as a bit of an extended warm up. I'm looking for that end of mile 2 to really be where I'm settling into a race pace that I feel like I can sustain for the rest of the race. It helps me to get comfortable early. It just helps me settle into the race in general. When I kind of get settled in there, I'm starting to look for people that are running the pace that I think I might want to run for the rest of that day. Because I love attaching myself to a little bit of a group, and I might keep 2 or 3 people in my eyes and say, I want to make sure that I don't lose range with these people here. That person's running a really steady pace. I really like that pace. I'm going to stick with them for as long as possible. And certainly comes to a scenario sometimes where if you're feeling good and they start losing it, go find the next person. Find that person that is holding the pace you want to hold and sustain. The good news, unless you're in first place, there's always somebody to find that you can probably kind of latch yourself to, use as a little guidepost during the way. Overall in the half, the pacing should hopefully be pretty darn even. I mentioned the relaxed start, my personal preference to kind of add in there, but afterwards, no huge surges at the end. Negative split is great if you can do it, but really I'm looking for even splits in my athletes usually. You absolutely need to slow your pace on big hills. So don't try to hold that exact half marathon pace on major inclines. You have to back off the pace a little bit, try to keep your effort consistent. Use the downhill to recover from the hill. So I would actually ask people not to try to surge to make up time on that downhill. I want athletes to recover on the downhill and then kind of settle back into pace on the flats. So back off on the uphills, recover on the downhills, steady on the flats. Is kind of my tip on that at least. I think most people by mile 10, if you're really racing the half marathon, are absolutely kind of going into the hurt locker. At that point, just try to really stay positive. At that point of the race, I'm trying to really focus on my breath, make sure I'm breathing nice and relaxed, trying to focus, make sure I have a good turnover here, that my legs aren't getting too sluggish. I'm keeping a snappy turnover, and I'm thinking of some positive imagery. I'm really focusing on that finish line feeling of running across, getting that hard as rock bagel and apple, and that, the metal that goes with our finish lines. So keep that positive imagery on there. That was not so positive, I must say, of myself. So maybe don't use that example. It is reasonable to ask multiple times during these races, why the hell did I sign up for this thing? Try to flip your mentality on it. And once again, remember, it's supposed to be a fun experience. Try to make it as such. Our week 10 photo challenge has to be race day. It's time to put the hard work to the test. Share a photo or story about how you rocked your half marathon. We'll pick our favorite, send a little Team Wilpers gear your way. Make sure to tag @TeamWilpers, @TeamWilpers, something else. I didn't update my notes, unfortunately, here. But hashtag #TeamWilpersHalf to participate. I will post about it on our Facebook group. Jump into some questions that came up during the group. So, can you talk about light, tall, relaxed, and how the cue is beneficial? Yes, I'm going to go not in that order, but yes. So this, in general, as kind of a very common saying, is kind of part posture and part mindset cue. So let's go word for word here. And the tall aspect of it is really, you want to keep your head up, not feet looking at the ground. You want shoulders to kind of be pulled back, kind of standing upright with a good posture. And you want to, ultimately what it's kind of alluding to is you want to avoid that late race hunch where a lot of people get, where kind of your shoulders are pulled forward, your arms are in, because your diaphragm's compressed. You're not breathing as effectively. Posture isn't conducive. So kind of want to go from this, I don't know what these hands are, but want to go from here to a little bit more pulled back, open chest, going to help breathing, going to help energy, eyes up. That's kind of what that tall is looking like. Light is really want to be thoughtful on footfalls. So you want these light, quick steps, really short ground contact time is the ideal there. So I've talked about with hill running in particular, downhill, where you want to avoid those heavy footfalls. So if you especially notice later in the race, you start getting these heavy footfalls that you didn't have early in the race. It's a chance just to check in, make sure you're turning over your legs often, And the cue, that light feel that you want, is just quick ground contact time. It's if you're really plodding and settling in, can you change your stride up a little bit in order to have that quick contact time, turn over more rapidly? That's kind of the light feel right there. And then the relaxed is we can carry tension all throughout our bodies in a lot of non-productive ways for running. Most commonly might be the shoulders start to kind of come up to the ears, kind of goes with the hunch I was talking about. We carry some tension in our shoulders here. A lot of people, tension in the hands, in particular for people who carry water, phone, etc. But even if not, you get these like fists all of a sudden. Where I had a running coach who actually said, think about kind of keeping your fingers like this, where it was like you're holding a Lay's potato chip. That's the pressure really you want there. It doesn't help to all of a sudden have two fists here. And then the furrowed brow is, especially you start to get deep in the race, you're struggling a little bit. We can kind of get this furrowed brow that doesn't ultimately serve us. So, I kind of joked a little bit about trying to smile a bit during the race, but you can actually save energy by just kind of taking a beat, trying to reflect, refresh, smile instead of kind of keeping a little bit of an unhappy scowl on your face there. Try to reset the expectation, go on with the rest of the race. So it's kind of the general idea of like kind of tall, light, relaxed there. Tips for intra-race nutrition. So I remember the advice to eat for anything over an hour or so, but when to start taking in nutrition, how long it takes to kick in, and how often would be a great refresher. So caveat here, and I think this is actually the most important with this duration timeline to our kind of race weekend, is that it's for next weekend, it's a little bit too late to start incorporating much of this into your routine. At this point, the downside risk of GI distress probably outweigh the upside you can get from really like honing into nutrition in the next 8-9 days. So whatever you did during training, right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what you have to do now on race day. So just take the consistency that you've had in your workouts thus far, copy it over. Some rule of thumbs, however, on kind of intra-workout nutrition. Most gel brands kind of old school ideology recommend, let's say, a gel or nutritional product about every 45 minutes. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to start it 45 minutes into the race. Some people start at 15 minutes into the race, then it's every 45. Some people I know have done it right at the starting line. That is a little bit based upon your own experience, but the nutrition makers are recommending a cadence of about every 45 minutes or so. When I think about the general nutritional kind of impact of a gel, I think usually it's about 100 calories, 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrates. That's every 45 minutes. It's a baseline. Say in recent years, the guidance on this has actually moved a bit forward, and providers are saying for experienced athletes, it's not experienced runners, but athletes that are very experienced taking intra-workout nutrition can really probably digest as much as maybe 2 gels an hour or 1 gel every 30 minutes, which is going to be 200 calories an hour, 40 to 60 grams of carbohydrates over the course of that hour of exercise. Once again, if you haven't been doing this as part of your routine, if you've been doing it every hour, don't switch now to every 30 minutes, 8 days ahead of time. That's kind of a recipe for disaster in your stomach. So these are changes you make slowly and incrementally over the course of a long training block. That being said, the half marathon in particular, to be quite honest, the nutritional demands of this event are not so important, let's say, in comparison to that of a marathon. The marathon, the nutritional supplementation is kind of crucial to success late in the race. Yes, you can do it without, but why would you at this point with kind of what we know about what we know? The half marathon, it's a little bit different beast, so it's not nearly as critical. So don't be too concerned if you haven't been training with intra-workout nutrition. Don't change your strategy drastically now. It's kind of why I say it's much better to do what you've done in training on your race day here with this kind of timetable. But outside of your carbohydrates, one other kind of component to go into your intra-workout kind of nutrition idea is electrolytes. Electrolytes are sometimes included in gels and sometimes they're not. You have to check with whatever the product you're using is. This can be taken in a drink mix. This can be taken in a tablet, a chew, etc. There are a lot of ways to get electrolytes into the balance. There's going to be a particular significance with heavy sweaters and also hot weather running of trying to get more electrolytes, which is basically salt back into your body to help with water retention. So that's kind of, I would say, the second piece of the pie when you think about intra-workout. It's like you want calories, and mostly in terms of carbohydrates, and you want electrolytes in terms of fluid and water retention right there. But one more time, not totally crucial in the half marathon in the same way it is in the marathon, but if you've been including it, if you feel very comfortable with it, continue to execute your intra-workout plan. If not, continue to execute the plan which you have done in training. Our next question here was tips about running in rain. I've only run in snow, but would love any pointers. So we're 1 week out here in New York City. All weekend, this weekend's looking like rain. So next weekend, I haven't seen an advanced weather report up and down the East Coast yet. It's been a rainy month. So for those runners that have spent a lot of time inside over the last many months here, is when the elements start to come into play. So I don't know why this question came up or not, but let's just go ahead and say there's a chance of rain across the, the nation for our next weekend, our race weekend here. And to be honest, for the most part, running in rain is just like running the rest of the time. You just get a little bit wet during the process. I just mentioned heavy sweaters. If you're a heavy sweater, it actually can be a performance enhancer to cool your skin down a little bit better during the course of a workout. But there are definitely some tips and tricks. And so when I think about rain in particular, the first thing would be my kind of counter question is, what's the temperature outside? And if it's warm, you just dress exactly the same as you would have dressed for that race day. You go out, you absolutely are going to get wet during the course of that run. You finish, you change, no change to your routine. However, if it's cold and rainy, it starts to become a little bit of a different scenario. So for me, I consider that 40 degrees and below, but you really have to have experience with it. You have to know what cold is for you. So cold and rain is 40 degrees and below for me. At that point, it's very likely you might need to consider adding a layer and potentially even a waterproof layer for that workout. So let's talk a little bit about raincoats. And so the plus of the raincoat is that it keeps water off your core. So if it is, let's say 40 and below, 30 some degrees and rainy, that can really start to add up over the course of time. So keeping that water off your core, keeping your body a little bit insulated there can make a big difference. The negative is that raincoats in general, and I've ran in a lot of them, tend to be very hot. It's a non-water permeable object, so it's going to also hold heat really well. So once again, cold weather might be great. If it's kind of on the cusp there, I've seen a lot of athletes kind of overheat during the race, trying to get that raincoat off, tied around their waist, and it's not a very comfortable object to try to carry with you for 13 1/10 miles, unfortunately. So footwear would be kind of the next piece. Once again, your feet are going to get wet. There are Gore-Tex shoes out there, but when the water starts splashing, it comes down your legs, it comes down your socks, your feet are going to get wet. So I was actually talking with one of our coaches as a trail and ultra specialist yesterday. She kind of recommended actually not using the waterproof shoes. We both kind of alluded to the fact once there's water in the waterproof shoe, there's nowhere for it to get out of. So your feet are going to get wet. That's just a kind of a fact of running in rain. I think the best thing you can do is wear a thin, very good wicking sock, something that's not going to retain that water and let the water kind of run back off. But just be okay with it. Change your mentality. It's going to be a little bit wet. It's going to be a little bit soggy. You can run just the same. I was talking to an athlete 2 days ago, talked about kids don't seem to mind the rain. They go out, they jump in puddles, they run around, they come in filthy. Only adults seem to mind the rain. So really is a mental issue. And if you can kind of overcome that hurdle and just try to have some fun with it, it really changes the game. Hat is a nice addition sometimes in the rain, especially if you get heavy rain, just because it can kind of keep water out of your eyes. People with long hair can keep hair from kind of washing down into your eyes. So definitely a garment worth considering to just try to keep the rain off your face. But as I mentioned, overall, I would modify as little of your race kit as possible. You absolutely want to be safe, you want to be comfortable out there, but try to stay dry before the event. That's kind of the opportunity. I really like to modify things, to cover myself with either a plastic bag, a disposable poncho, something to hopefully keep me as dry as long as possible. But once the running starts, The running, thankfully, kind of keeps you pretty warm. Do want to make sure you have something extra warm to change into at the end of the event when your body's temperature starts to really settle after being elevated for a very extended period of time. But overall, don't overthink it too much. It's just a little bit of water. It's going to be okay. Another kind of shoe question here is, can we talk about shoes? Do you have shoes just for outdoor running and others for indoor? I've never subscribed to this philosophy and have been running for, well, let's just say a long time. So first of all, there's no reason necessarily to have indoor and outdoor shoes and them be separate. Not in particular. That being said, there's really nothing wrong with it either. And for the most part, at this exact point in time, I'm really using the same shoe, both indoors and outdoors, but that has not always been the case. And so I thought I would just share my example of why you might have an indoor and an outdoor. And it was when I was a younger runner. So I've also someone who's also been running for a while. I really, really loved that movement to the super neutral, super minimal, not all the way to the toe shoes, but a very lightweight, flexible, malleable shoe. It's not a lot of cushion there, not a lot of shoe kind of under your foot, if you will. As time went on, as miles piled up, as years went by, I started to finish long runs and really hard workouts in those shoes, and my feet were just beat up. They would hurt, and they would hurt for days all of a sudden. So it all of a sudden became important for me to bring in a little bit more shoe, a more cushioned shoe, something that could be a little bit better impact resistant versus the ground to put in the miles. So that being said, it doesn't mean I didn't still like those neutral shoes. So what I ultimately did was I would use those really neutral shoes indoors when I was running on kind of, let's say, an indoor track or a treadmill. They were still very comfortable for me. They gave me that kind of foot-ground connection that I wanted, but I was able to control the surface. I was able to control the amount of miles that I put on them because I was working with them indoors there. So in general, there's not a reason to necessarily do one or another. However, there certainly, at the end of the day, it's whatever kind of makes you comfortable. If you feel more comfortable running inside on one shoe and outside on another, great. If you feel comfortable running in the same shoe all the time, also great. At the end of the day, it's whatever works for you, whatever allows you to keep putting those miles in. Well, friends, that is all for this week, actually. Can't believe, once again, that we've completed 10 weeks here. Certainly the 5-week extension challenge kicks off in just a week's time. But have an amazing race week. I hope to see so many of you in New York City here in the week ahead, and have a great one.